Hey, everybody. This is Chet Zar, your host, for another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast, episode 192. Today I am interviewing Gio Nakpil, who is a really amazing digital 3D sculptor. And I'm pretty excited about this, because since I got my Oculus Quest 2, I finally kind of took the plunge into getting back into 3D again with the Adobe Medium program. So I'm excited to talk to him about that and digital. I mean, many of you know I was all digital all the time for a few years there back in the late 90s. And once I got into painting, I kind of left it behind, and now all the tools are so amazing. I feel like, I feel like I was a little too early to the party before. And now that there are all these amazing tools and all this amazing technology, that now I don't have time to play with it. So anyway, I'm trying to get there. Speaking of which, I started this big commission, 24 by 30 inch portrait commission that has been 4 years in the making because of this extremely patient collector. So that is a huge relief, just getting that thing started. I'm really into it. So I'm going to be live streaming probably most of that painting on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Chet Zar, and I'm also going to turn it into a time lapse when it's all over and post that up there. I posted a picture of the underpainting. It's looking good so far. I don't know. Happy to start getting these things done. Didn't get my update yet from the book from Mackie on the book design, but she says Wednesday at the latest I'm going to get a new update. So I'm going to be able to post an update on Kickstarter for that. And that gets closer and closer. It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. Just to get the stuff done is going to be huge. So anyway, I'm just trying to get back. That's what's going on in my life. I'm just trying to get back in the swing of things and taking care of all the stuff I owe. Commissions, Kickstarter rewards, my book, all that business. Trying not to take on any new stuff until that stuff is all done. Anyway, so yeah, let's get with, let me see, new subscribers. Okay, we got a deletion. Okay, here's a new Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to join and support this podcast, you can join Patreon at patreon.com/Dark Art Society. And here's the other good thing about joining Patreon. It's cheap, and there's a lot of other amazing artists on there. Like Tom Taggart's on there, Mike Carell's on there, showing his crazy life now, and but a lot of really great artists I follow on here. David Stupakis. A lot of people have Patreons, and many of them you can join for like $1. So you could theoretically spend like $5 and have access to all this exclusive content from 5 artists you love. So $5 a month. It's a great value, and it's really been a game changer for me, just having that income from my Patreon every month. Anyway, if you want to support this podcast, patreon.com/Dark Art Society, and here are some new subscribers. Oh, you get in, and I can't overstate how great the Patreon Facebook, the private Dark Art Society cooperative Facebook group is. It's really a great community. It's great, and it gets better all the time. Very active. So that's part of what you get, aside from the early podcast, and aside from just knowing that you're supporting something that you listen to and that you enjoy. Okay, so new subscribers. Franco Carlesimo upped his pledge. Thank you, Franco. Josh Hardy joined. I want to have him on the podcast because he's a really great artist. So I'm going to have him on. He's He's great. Josh Hardy, thank you. Randall B. Perkins, the keeper of the new subscribers list. He upped his pledge. Thanks, Randall. That's cool of you. And Orztur, Orztirr, Orztur Studios joined. Thank you, Orztur Studios. I really appreciate that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention too, I guess since we're going to be talking about VR and VR sculpting and digital stuff, like I said, I got that Oculus Quest 2 in November for my birthday, and just, really was changed my focus for a lot of things. It's really inspiring. I see the potential for doing great art stuff art-wise. But I got this game called In Death Unchained, which is a PC game, I believe, from, 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe longer, I don't know. But it's been ported to the Oculus Quest 2, and it is so amazing. I'm completely addicted to this game. It's a bow and arrow game, and you basically are going through these levels of hell and this old abandoned creepy castle and some other dimension, and you get to kill evil monks that are trying to shoot you with bows and arrows, and evil knights that come after you. And it's so cool. It's so cool. It's so much fun shooting an evil monk in the head with an arrow at a distance. So that's what my latest little guilty pleasure is, when I allow myself, a few, an hour, half an hour here and there to take a break. I just thought I would mention that because that game is it's so fun. I mean, I really got into Arizona Sunshine for a while, and I beat that. And then I got into Super Hot VR, and I beat that. And those are really fun also. But I don't know, In Death Unchained kind of takes the cake for me so far. I just think that all the artwork's amazing, and the atmosphere is amazing, and the gameplay is great. So that's it. Okay, let's get on with it. All right, here goes. We're going to now interview. I haven't interviewed him yet this time. I'm doing the intro before the interview, so I can't tell you how it's going to be. Normally I do it after, but I had some time today, so it should be a good interview. He seems like a really cool guy, and he's a great artist, so I'm excited about it. All right, here we go with Gio Nakpil. Hello, Gio. How are you?
Hey, Chet. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on here. I'm very excited to have you on. I think you might be the first digital artist we've had on, like strictly digital.
Oh, okay. Because I thought I saw Bayard, but he's pretty much like
Bayard hasn't been on yet. He hasn't been on.
He hasn't been here yet?
No, he hasn't been on the show yet. I want to have him on. He's been in the Conjoined show.
Okay. My bad on that one.
I mean, there may have been some photos. We're like, this is going to be episode 192, so I can't even remember all the interviews at this point. But there's definitely, I don't think we've had like a 3D sculptor on yet, digital sculptor. So it's very exciting to have you on.
That's an honor, dude. if I'm the first on that, man. I'm like,
your stuff is so amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start. I wonder if we worked on you, because you used to work in the film industry, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if we worked on any of the same movies, but like in different departments.
I'm pretty sure, because I was at ILM for 12 years, and prior to that, I was at ESC working on The Matrix for about
my God.
The Matrix sequels for, I don't know if you were in.
No.
Yeah. So all in all, I was in the film industry for about 12 years, I think. So there must have been at least one project you and I intersected
there must have been something.
Unknowingly.
There has to be something. I'm gonna research that after, but
all right, compare IMDb's.
Yeah. So you are primarily known as a creature guy, right? Or would you? I mean, that's the stuff I love the most that you've done. I've seen a lot of character work, I guess you would call it, but you're like a monster guy. Right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if asking myself to like what do I consider myself to be, I think it's my true love has always been creatures. Having grown up in probably the same era as you, the 80s and the era of like those prosthetic and makeup effects, the
Thing
Rick Bakers, the Fangorias, the John Carpenters.
Yeah. So that's your influence. That's you're into all those movies and stuff back then.
Oh yeah, totally. That was I think even more so than Star Wars and all that stuff, the Spielberg, the George Lucas stuff, obviously pretty big. But primarily, like I wouldn't even call it a mistake, but my biggest thing my parents ever did for me was allowed me to watch all those films when I was still a young one.
Right.
Like The Thing, Exorcist, Rick and the Blob. That I didn't realize how violent the Blob was until seeing like footage recently of how not the 1950s, but the remake of the Blob.
That was the first movie I ever worked on. Like the first major movie I ever worked on.
No shit.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay.
I did the little. Do you remember the little kid that jumps out of the sewer when he gets pulled under? I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yes. Yeah.
That was one of my characters that I got to
Was
design.
that you?
Yeah.
Well, that had that movie in general.
It is really violent. It is really violent. I watched it recently.
It's pretty freaking violent.
Yep.
And Life Force, that era.
Life Force. Yep.
I forgot the name of the woman there, the naked vampire. That was like my first crush.
Yeah.
As far as I can remember.
Man, I haven't seen that movie since it first came out in the 80s. But that was, I remember that was heavily covered in like Fangoria and and stuff like that. I remember seeing a lot of that was like one of those, that and Krull. Remember Krull?
Krull, that was another one with the shuriken, whatever you call that thing. The star that he would throw. The creature work on that one was pretty cool, from what I remember. I have vague memories of all these films. I know.
I like going back now and watching them because you have such a different perception of them. Especially with all the technology that's come since and how your eye has been trained to see things more clearly, and you could it's always I love to. I just watched I don't know if you've seen this is a really weird one. It's the one with it's from the 70s though. It's the underwater Nazi zombies.
Zombie Lake.
No, not unless that was an alternative title. It's Death Waves. Death Waves.
I think that might have been because Zombie Lake. I was in the Philippines when I was young, so they would change titles.
You. Yeah, I bet you it was.
Because if it's lake based and it's a zombie,
were they like Nazi zombie SS guys with goggles on? Because that's there's no other movie like that. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe not. I think Zombie Lake was something then. Yeah.
Anyway, it's funny because I watched that after so many years, and it's like really
what
bad.
Holds up though, like that
really
you watched
bad.
recently. You think? Except for The Thing, which is that's like bar none, it holds up.
Oh yeah, still. Absolutely. I did watch one of the things that I thought held up pretty well effects wise was The Blob. Because I was watching that recently for a live, they were doing like a viewing party, and so I was like one of the guests on there, so I watched it again, and a lot of that stuff I thought still really held up, aside from some of the green screen type, like the edge of the mats, stuff like that. But man, I can't think of I can't think of a horror movie. I can think of other great movies from the 80s and stuff that I love that still hold up. Like, I don't know if you ever saw With Nail and I. Have you ever seen that one?
Oh yeah.
That's
With Nail and I.
That's such a great movie. It's such a great movie. But yeah, I watch a ton of movies. I have movies on when I paint, so I'm just like,
not necessarily horror, right? Like just like a smattering.
I mean, I horror is my base, but I do, the older I get, the more I just kind of appreciate good storytelling and stuff,
Yeah.
So, as far as your were you an art kid? Were you drawing and sculpting or whatever as a little kid? Was it kind of a natural thing, or how did that come about?
Yeah, no, I was pretty much one of those kids where my parents were worried about me because I didn't really have any interest in anything else. Like I wasn't really good at anything else, maybe because I never really put any effort into anything outside of drawing. Even art classes, for me, I failed. Like, it's weird because, you would assume, or they would assume, oh, he must be good in art class. Now, failed that too, like math, biology. It was just, I was very much into my own thing.
Right.
And whenever it came to like regimented learning, like art history or this or that, you got to learn about Michelangelo. Like back then, I was like, I don't want to learn about.
Yeah, same here.
But when I had to learn about those artists for myself, I think that's I don't know if it's a form of dyslexia or like some learning disability that I had, but all that was pretty hard because I was just pretty focused on not even art, but just kind of like my own world sort of thing, Right.
Yeah. I can completely relate. Yeah. Learning like art history and stuff like that is something that, I wasn't even really interested until I was probably like, in my 30s, it was like, it just never, old masters paintings, which of course I love. And I love the technique. It's like, even now, I mean, I can appreciate them. They're amazing. They're as good as it gets as far as painting goes, but it's hard to relate. It's hard to relate for me to these old paintings with people that I just feel like I don't have like a real connection with. It's like, and maybe I'm unsophisticated in that way, but it's like they never really grabbed me. Like the stuff that grabbed me, even when I was a kid, was like Escher, MC Escher. I always thought was just so weird and cool, and Dali. As far as like kind of traditional, I don't know, surrealist or whatever. But when you get older, you start everything. Things change when you get older, and your tastes change for sure.
Yeah, it was about the same time for me too, like in my 30s, where I started kind of like really getting into the techniques and more on the sculpture side of things, because that's really what I'm into. But it's funny how that is. Like it kind of hits you late in life.
Yeah, even like different styles of music that I thought I would would never like when I was a kid. I like all kinds of stuff now. It's just like it's like a switch goes off in your head when you get to a certain age, and then another one goes off a few years later. It's really weird. But
they always tell you the older you get, the more like kind of one-track minded.
Right.
People get, but I'm like, no, I'm listening to like boy bands right now, BTS. Like, never even think about like I never got into boy bands, but I'm like BTS. Oh, come on, man, they're so good.
Yeah, I've. It's weird because in some ways I am completely stuck in my ways. Like the music that I always go back to is the same as the stuff that I was really into. But I'm just, it's like I'm just adding to the my palette is open more. It's like as far as the things I like musically and stuff. Just because I don't know. So much of when I was young, it was about like only liking what was cool or considered cool within, this, underground or whatever. And then you get older and you're like, fuck, that's all a bunch of bullshit. It's like kid stuff, just like
it's
what you
tiring
like.
Pretending to act cool, man.
Exactly. Exactly. So did you go to school, art school or anything like that? Like, how did you, develop
not really any formal art school. It was more out of like self-imposed necessity, because like, well, I don't really know what to do in life, so what makes sense is I saw Jurassic Park and I knew how to draw, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Actually, it was The Abyss, right? Like that whole turning point in computer graphics, where it was because I really wanted to get into like the practical effects field, because that's like my passion. And then all of a sudden, like the digital stuff kind of came about with Abyss, Terminator. It's like, oh, It's now kind of being like more human in representation. Like, you get like human forms and stuff instead of like blobby water. And then frickin' Jurassic Park, obviously with a T-Rex, that moment, the raptors, and I was just like, whoa, what is this?
That was the one where every makeup effects guy went, "Oh my God, it's over for us."
Yeah. It's like always touched on like the documentary, right? Like, you guys are extinct.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh man, I hope to God not, because even though I was so into CG, I really still wanted to be in the practical effects field, and so I took like a course at a college in Toronto, like the quickest one I could find, and it was like 3D Studio Max or DOS, even like not even Lightwave or anything like higher end. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way, and then like start working, because deep down I kind of felt like, well, this is still based on art, right? Like the professor that I had was. They weren't artists. They knew nothing. You can't teach me anything, because you know nothing. Why should I listen to you? It's just a formality of being there, right? So I just wanted to like get that over with. It was like a 1 year, it was more like not even a diploma, like sort of like a certificate. And then I just started, trying to kind of like go for anything and everything that would kind of like I would come across, like, oh, Toshiba. Shipping and handling, they do computers, maybe it's just kind of like shot in the dark, sort of a like grasping in the dark to kind of figure out what to do from there.
So did you live in? Where did you grow up? I mean, you were in Canada, or where did you grow up?
I was born in the Philippines, so about like. When I was 11, my family, mom, dad, and sister, and I went to Canada.
Okay.
And so that's where I went to school, to college, and then I pretty much was able to land some gigs, and then went to Texas, to Maryland.
Wow.
And then from there, it's like been like pretty much most of my life I've been working here in the States. Like I'm already a citizen, naturalized citizen. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And you're in LA now?
I'm in San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. What was your? I mean, I kind of want to get. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but I sort of want to just get like the background history stuff out of the way, so we can talk about the more fun stuff.
Yeah. Of course.
So you, what was your? How'd you break into the industry? Into doing. It's like I there was that point, because I'm like probably 10 years older than you, I'm thinking, at least, probably. Because I started around 86 in makeup effects when I was like 19 or 20 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I graduated high school in 85, so that tells you I'm like 53.
Well, if you worked on the Blob and I was like
Yeah, right.
Like, I didn't mean to make you feel old, but I thought we were like at the same age, and like, oh shit, you worked on the Blob.
Yeah, right. It's fine. Everybody I interview on here makes me feel old now. I'm like,
and then this interview will never be published.
No. It's like I always say, I used to always be the youngest one in any group, like in effects, because I started young. I was always the youngest guy. And now I'm like the oldest guy in my peer group. It's kind of funny. I don't really give a shit, actually. But anyway, so I got into effects in 86 or 86, 87. And then around by the mid to late 90s, I got really into digital. And it's like I wanted to get into that out of effects, because really Jurassic Park came out. And things were changing, and it was obvious. But I was just really interested in the technology, so I started teaching myself Lightwave and 3D animation, and just for mainly for my own, just to make art, because I thought it was the really cool medium that had so much potential. And now I got to a point where I had a like a demo reel and everything.
Oh wow.
And Tool had used some of my stuff like in their live shows. I made these looping animations and stuff, all polygon modeling, point by point. No ZBrush sculpting.
That era.
But I was just about to kind of take the plunge and try and get a job in that industry, and then I was like, I think this is probably a lot like the makeup effects industry. Mm-hmm. So it's just like probably a digital version of the makeup effects industry. I'm still going to be doing somebody else's thing. And I really wanted more autonomy and kind of to do my own artwork, which ended up getting me to jumping ship on all of it and just doing my own fine art stuff. But I'm curious how you kind of landed your first job, because I was going to those conventions. I was going and trying to like giving my demo tape to like that one dude who had that he'd made that short in Maya with the clown.
Oh, Chris Landreth.
Yeah. I mean, I gave him one of my tapes one time. I was like seriously trying to get in somewhere, and no one was really paying attention. But anyway, how did you wind up getting in the business?
Oh man, it was like a very scattered path. So I was after college, I was pretty much just like, actually, during college, or not college, like when I took that freaking course that really wasted my money on, I was doing my own thing, like on the side, like my own personal work. So I was like developing that, and then like I came across like, GeoCities. What's this GeoCities? Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah.
That website. So I created an account, and I've just been posting stuff there. And I would get like reactions, right, like from people. And this was before any of the social media that it is now.
Right. What year? What year are you talking?
1990, like late 90s probably. Like
okay.
97, 98.
That's right around the time I started getting into computers.
Yeah, 96, 97, 98. I was like in GeoCities doing that, and so that kind of became my pet project. Even though I was like trying to look for like more professional jobs, so I went from like doing graphic design to like being a lackey for some post-production place, making dub tapes and all that stuff. So I was like, man, nothing's really like hitting here. And then I was lucky enough to land a gig in Maryland for a video game company there, but it was like slave labor. I would like work till like 1 a.m. for like a solid year, all that stuff. And then went to Texas, worked at Jimmy Neutron, which was my first gig. But all the while I was like building up my website, my online presence, because it was just like, it was a way for me to kind of like, okay, well, there's some reaction here. It's just become sort of like a muscle memory of me just kind of doing art. It became sort of a part of my regimen, right? Mm-hmm. Like after work, I would still do work, but my own work, which I put a lot more value on, right? And then like one day I got an email from on my Hotmail account, like for some dude at ILM going, hey, we saw your website. Would you be interested to apply for a
Are you serious?
Here?
Wow.
Yeah,
that must have been pretty amazing.
I mean,
ILM, start at the top, man.
I was like, I did not even bother applying at ILM because I was like, well, there's just no hope. That's always been my goal, right? Like that and like the makeup effects places or the model shop at ILM. But I was like, sure, I'm interested, thinking like, this guy could be a fraud because he had an at Hotmail account, right? And then his reply was like at ILM. So, oh my goodness, it's on now. And I got a job there in short, and it was still in the time when the model shop still existed at ILM, which was a thing to see, man. It was like in the same facilities where you'd open up like Cinefex. It's like the same facade of building with that pattern on the wall. Like, oh my gosh, that's where they did that thing for Jedi. And then Dennis Muren was here in that one shot. I remember. It was pretty trippy, man. And then they closed down the model shop, but I got to see it before that era.
That's really
totally
cool.
Closed, yeah.
That's really cool. That I mean, there's not a lot of guys like you in that field, are there? Like the Fango guys and gals that wanted to get into practical effects. Like I don't hear that very often. It seems like a lot of people that go into digital creature design, or maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like your background is like an effects person's a makeup effects person's background. Based on the stuff that you're into. This is all the stuff that all the people in the shops were into. We all share this.
Oh, yeah.
But I know when I was kind of like fiddling around trying to get a job, it didn't seem like there was anybody. I didn't ever met anybody like that at any of the conventions or any of the digital people. They were like maybe more sci-fi. You know, it was more like sci-fi and Star Wars and stuff like that. And it was almost like Star Wars was the middle ground between sci-fi and horror in a way. It was kind of like something we both liked. But I mean, is there you're kind of unusual in that way, do you think?
I think you're right, because in terms of like connecting with people, in terms of, you know, like the stuff I grew up with, at least in the CG community,
right?
In thinking about it, like I think the influence is a bit more like sci-fi slanted. Like I would even say like Blade Runner, and Star Wars,
right?
You know, that's sort of the gradient, and then like the fantasy, Lord of the Rings type. I don't know what the fantasy would be. I mean, my fantasy was like Conan the Barbarian, you know, that that level of old. Yeah,
there's
school
definitely
work.
Crossover for sure.
Yeah.
But as far as the people, you know, people that got Fango and stuff, that generally, it seems like there's not there. At least when I was kind of trying to get in there, there wasn't a lot of digital artists that were like horror people that liked horror movies and bought Fango and stuff. So,
I think so. Yeah, I haven't really met anyone.
That's what I was thinking. Right. It's like you're kind of unusual in that way.
Because maybe that's why I'm like, because not a lot of people really in my field, I think, have that much interest in the hybrid of horror and I mean, they do a lot of creatures, right? But the hybrid of horror and creatures that I like to do is sort of like, yeah, and I think you're right. It is based on the influence of like Fangoria and like 80s.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If I say Chud, do you watch Chud? To anyone like, what's Chud?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
the Chud test.
Come on. You know, what does it stand for? Creatures.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Yeah. So there
if you don't know that, you don't know shit.
Don't talk to me if you don't know that, man. I didn't even know I forgot about the full meaning, but I'm like, Chud, man.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a little bit of a you know, I just was thinking that. Okay, you get a job at ILM, and were you immediately doing, what were you doing there?
Oh, I was actually a hard surface modeler. First couple of models they gave me were like hard surface, essentially, because at ILM back then it was very, very political. The creature people were like, you know, like the rock stars. You gotta pay your dues before you even get to touch a creature. So they threw me into the hard surface group, which was like, I mean, Star Wars is like the backbone of it. It's not really a creature show. It's like a show about spaceships, right?
Right.
So that was the bulk of the work, and they had me do all these hard surface models that are like almost industrial design using like Alias NURBS modeling packages. Was like, I come from Lightwave, but they had me doing like NURBS modeling for like, this is how you would build a car at Ford or BMW. And I'm like, what the hell? I don't really know how to do this. But, you know, you just kind of have to jump in the moment. But, you know, I actually loved it. Like I had a really awesome mentor for hard surface, and for about a long time, I was a hard surface modeler there. But deep down, I really wanted to be a creature, you know, artist.
Right.
And they held sculpting classes at ILM, and so I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to try and prove myself and kind of show the creature group that you know, hopefully I'm capable, right? So I started attending the sculpting classes and befriended some of the people there, and was given a chance, and then they still laid me off. So I was kind of like, shit, okay, well, at least I got to do one creature, which was the first creature I ever did at ILM was Dreamcatcher. I think Crash McCreary did it. Like remember that Stephen King based movie, Dreamcatcher? It had the shit weasels.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to build the gray alien, Mr. Gray,
cool.
for that one. I think it was a Carlos Huante design, or no, it was a Crash McCreary designed thing. So I was like, they had a maquette because back then, like maquettes would be sculpted for us digital artists to
they would draw a grid on it, and then you would use the little pen tool.
Like on the half, and then the other half, you could see the beautiful sculpture. And I miss that era, honestly. Like right now, I mean, I don't really appreciate like just being given like a ZBrush model that the character artist did. I'm like, this is never going to be as good as if someone from the model shop did it, right? Like, so.
Yeah, it's so funny to look back. I really feel like I was, I used to dream of a ZBrush type program back when I was in like 98 and doing lightwave modeling, because I was doing realistic creatures, like humanoid creatures, and they looked good. I mean, I look back at them and they do look good, but it's like, you had to go in there and basically do the points and polygons, and it was just like super tedious, which I actually kind of enjoyed it. I did kind of like it because I'm like, even with sculpture, I'm very detail oriented. I really like the detailing phase, so I can get into tedious stuff. But I used to fantasize about, man, why can't there just be like a sculpting program where you could just sculpt with it? And then I did start learning ZBrush. I kind of got out. I got out of digital after I did this. I made a DVD of all the stuff I did for Tool. There are these looping animations that are kind of like my paintings, but just like looping, and it was just too far ahead of its time. I'm telling you, man. I wanted to do these animations that looped, and then I was thinking you could put them. They put them each one on a flat screen. Put it up on the wall, and then that's like a painting, a moving, living painting, and it would just loop endlessly, which is not like some crazy advanced idea now. It's like people do stuff like that. They're called GIFs or GIFs or whatever. It's people do this shit all the time, looping things that just loop. But at the time, it was a new thing and a really cool idea. Like turn this stuff into art, or turn your TV screen into a frame for a painting, basically.
Oh man,
in a way. But I mean, at the time, was like I wanted to have an art show with all these digital paintings that were looping, and it was like monitors were like $2,000 or $1,000 or whatever. It's like now is the time. Everything's so cheap. I just saw that one Beeple dude do that.
I was gonna say, man,
he's doing
and
it's like he made all that money with it. It's just like, I just missed the boat. I was like, I just missed the boat, or I was too early for the boat. It's like timing is everything.
Because that's the idea behind like what's going on now, right? Like you were like many years in advance into thinking that. That's amazing.
It's it bums me out. It just bums me out because I'm like, man, now I'm so old, and it's like I'm so out of it. Because I did that DVD, this animation DVD. It's like an art DVD. Basically, there's just these loops that just kind of play, and it's weird and creepy. It's like, all done on Lightwave and After Effects. And it starts off in like a tabletop, and like these creepy green hands push a suitcase into frame, and it's got like my logo embossed on it, my gas mask logo, and the hands kind of open it up, and it opens up, and that's your menu to choose the animations. It's like a red velvet inside of the suitcase, and there's a bunch of syringes. Syringes, in each syringe it's like kind of insinuating that these, I called it digital hallucinations. It's almost like a drug thing in a way. Like you pick the different syringe, and it does like it gets all weird, and then it just has this weird looping animation associated with it, and it just plays.
Yeah.
And it's it was like definitely it's
Man.
art. It was not very mainstream.
That sounds like
but-
it'll be perfect for VR, man.
That's what I'm saying now, man. And so I mean, so much. My head is like exploding since I got this Oculus Quest 2, man. It's
man, that's so good to hear.
It's crazy.
Chet Zar in VR. Oh my goodness.
Well, it's like, I've got this. We might as well get into it because I've been dying to talk to you about this. I've got this. For the last 5 years, or it's coming on 5 years. It's like 4 years. I did a Kickstarter 4 years ago to do this book, which is mythologizing all of my paintings into like a reality, almost like I've been painting a reality with all these characters. Yeah. And so this is like a guidebook, right? It's called Dystopia. And basically, once I have this guidebook, I was thinking, you could make comic books from it. You could do a TV series. You could do a movie. Mm-hmm. Now I get this Oculus Quest 2 for my birthday. Yeah. And now it's like, oh my God, Dystopia VR. That's what I really want to do. That would be amazing. Then I got someone recommended Adobe Medium, and I was like, I got like Sculptor VR, the one that's kind of like for kids. I got that for my granddaughters. I got it for them, and I was playing. It's like, oh, this is fun. And then Adobe Medium. It looks kind of like that. I'll try that out. And then I started playing. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like ZBrush in VR. I couldn't believe it. And it's like, you can go really far, I think, in Medium. Like as far as like finishing and having, I was like, because I was kind of pushing the limit, blowing it up really big and really refining wrinkles, using that kind of like, I forget what the tool is where it like sucks it in or it like pulls
the inflate.
Yeah, the inflate and deflate. Yeah. It's like, it's so amazing. It's so amazing. And it's a free program. Fucking completely blew my mind. I mean, I'm still just like, I can't even believe it. It's crazy. So the potential is so great for art. I'm just like, I'm going insane because I have to get this book done. I've got all these commissions that are late. So it's like all this year I have to really focus on getting everything done. And it's like, I've got this technology sitting there, and it's like I can't use it because I got to get all this other stuff done, man. It's killing me. And it's like I know somebody else is going to do something. If I don't do something, I'm going to miss out again if I'm not careful. And I'm going to be too late if I'm not careful.
People's going to be using Oculus Media.
I mean, I just can't imagine. It's already such an amazing program. I can't imagine in a year or something, or in a couple of years, or as it develops. It's like,
yeah. Well, I mean, so the story with that program is it started off at Oculus, right? Mm-hmm. That team, the Medium team, back when I was there as well at Oculus, and then they left Oculus to go to Adobe. Mm-hmm. So they're now at Adobe. So before they were at Oculus, well, let's face it, Facebook, which is an engineering company, right? Like they're not really an art-based company.
Right.
But that's the genesis of Medium. But now that they're in an art-focused company at Adobe, I can't divulge much, but if you can imagine the amount of support and where it could possibly go from this point, now that small program is under an art-focused company. Yeah. All I could say is there's a lot to be excited about. I think in terms of what where your mind is at in terms of creating in VR. I think you're going to be very excited in terms of the future of this. Yeah.
The other, the thing that totally tripped me out is that I learned ZBrush in 2000. It's like the last movie I worked on while I was officially in the business was Land of the Lost, the remake of that TV show. And we did the slee stacks in ZBrush. Like I was sculpting those in ZBrush. And then they blew them up and used them for reference or 3D. I forget how they did it. But I knew how to use it back then. And then I got out of the business and went full time with my fine art. And then I didn't use it. And I completely forgot everything. And it's so like daunting now. I just don't have the time to really get back into it, even though I own a copy. But Medium was like, I was using it in like really well in my first session. It's so easy to use. I couldn't believe it. And I didn't, they have like a short tutorial thing on there, and I just did that, and it was like so easy. I couldn't even believe it. Amazing. Yeah. I was so impressed and blown away.
Yeah. And it's actually like what I find is, based on my observation, people who have a traditional sculpting background like yourself, having worked in clay, something dimensional and tactile, right? Versus like a screen like ZBrush, which is more illustration based. Right. Like when they try a medium, it's like very that like, intuition of like a child playing with Play-Doh, right? Like it's as simple as that, because you're using your hand manipulating an object, and I think that is the appeal of it, is that you can get in there and start messing around, and you don't have to learn how to kind of like ZBrush. Nothing against ZBrush, I love ZBrush, but it's just
it's amazing.
It's designed for a flat screen, right?
Right.
So it has to kind of compensate for that. With Medium, you're there pushing and pulling. So it's more traditional, I guess.
Yeah. Right? It's. I mean, if it's there's no to compare. There's working in those two different ways. There's no comparison between being able to hold something.
Yeah.
I know I must sound kind of like a dummy, because this isn't new to you, but and it's like, I'm sure to a lot of people it's like not anything new, but being able
it's actually new for me too. Like we're kind of in the same boat here. I'm still in disbelief that this is happening.
Okay. Because the idea that you're able to blow something up.
Yeah.
Like I sculpted this zombie head just for fun, just to try it out, and to be able to go in, blow the thing up gigantic, and then go into like the eye socket and get everything perfect, and then shrink it back down really small so you can make major changes. It's like my mind is so, because I have that 3D background, my 3D modeling. I was good at it. I got really good at it, like all Lightwave, of course, but I mean, polygon modeling. And so it's like I know kind of what's going. I have that 3D program understanding, intuition. Yeah, I know how it works. That's probably maybe why it's part of why it was easy for me to learn. But I don't know. It's just it's like it's so crazy. It's just tripping me out. It's tripping me out. The potential's. I'm so excited about it. I'm so
cool.
Oh my god, to be able to have a giant sculpture and walk all around it. I was even doing this thing, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I don't even remember how I was doing it. It must have been the deflate button. I was able to get really good pores all over it by running the deflate button at a certain small size and having it was like I was able to run it. I'll show you the model when I can figure out. I'm so new to this. I'm so new to this. I can't even figure out how to get my models out of my Oculus. It's like it's not showing up on my PC. So it's like I'm still.
I can teach you all that, man. Yeah. Let me know.
Okay, I'll definitely be hitting you up. But I was able to get like really good pores all over the whole thing.
That's crazy.
And it was like, this looks really. I couldn't believe it. Believe it. So I'm just so excited, and you are like. You're in there, that's your job, part of one of your jobs now, or?
Yeah. A part of my job there at Adobe is to essentially use Medium to show its potential, to not just.
That sounds like the best job ever, basically.
Dude, I'm like, I don't know what I did in my past life.
Yeah, that's good karma.
I'm living the dream right now doing that, because not all I get to do, obviously, but I get to set project like I'm doing right now, like a Creature from the Black Lagoon in Medium, right? I'm like, I want to get all like makeup effectsy with this one eventually, like really get in there, and, like individual scales, like get all like gnarly with the nernies, like the stuff you get excited about.
Yeah.
But and then on the other hand too, like, okay, well, how does Medium map to like hard surface? Where, okay, well, what if the car industry or apparel industry? So like, thinking about like, well, it's
I
obviously
saw
not
I saw
just
that
features.
I saw on your Instagram like a hard surface thing you were like kind of sort of
Yeah.
secretive about, but you were like kind of
Yeah, it's like here's what's possible, guys. I'm gonna reveal it eventually. Dangle that carrot, even though it's just like I haven't had any time to work on it.
it just it seems to me like there's no question that people are going to be doing all digital sculpting is going to be VR. There's no comparison to doing it on a screen. There's just no comparison. If it's a 3D thing, especially.
Yeah,
It seems like eventually everyone's going to have VR headsets like TVs, and this is, I really think I'm really like a total believer in VR now. It's like everyone's going to have them like TVs because now they're getting cheap enough for people who could afford them, and anything that's digital sculpting or any of that stuff, anything that can be made enhanced by being in a VR environment is going to happen. It seems to me like I don't see how you could possibly prefer a flat screen to doing it there and holding it in your hands. It just there's no comparison.
Yeah, and eventually, like if AR, comes into view, so you can actually see your surrounding, where you can just like hang out in some cafe, kind of.
Right.
That'd be kind of like, it's like, man, what a nerd! Just go indoors, dude. But I would do it, like fancy AR glasses or whatever. But yeah, no, I think eventually, I think right now it's still pretty cumbersome, right? Like I still have sort of a limit of 2 hours maybe. Whereas with monitor, I think I'm just so used to it.
That's true.
But until we get to the point where it's like, okay, it gets maybe like thinner or more naturalistic to how it conforms to our faces, then
right.
Because as much as I love it, it's still a little bit of like fatiguing, I guess, right? Because you're kind of like doing this,
right?
Whereas if you're sculpting in clay, you can kind of just rest on it. You're not.
That's true. Yeah,
you're kind of like, oh man, it's like a flying squirrel.
Yeah, but it's good for you. It's good for you. Yeah. It's like exercise. We need exercise in this business. We need. Yeah, it's better than.
And I stand up. I stand up when I do VR. Like, I actually work better when I'm standing up because I can go around, right? Like the sculpture.
Yeah. So you are you using it often for just personal work, or do you kind of like use your job as an excuse to do something cool of your personal work so that you can illustrate what the software can do?
That's the great thing about it, is that there is an overlap, but there is still like sort of like purely professional stuff. But my personal stuff has become sort of at a point where whatever I do for my personal work, and that's where I get really creative, obviously. Right. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do like Dante's Inferno in VR.
Right.
And of course, like the professional stuff benefits, because when I do something like that and people are like, oh man, that's really cool, I don't know, how would you do that? The interest level becomes like higher for the software, which is good for the company or the software. So, and I don't know if it's good or bad, like kind of blurring the lines between the two.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know yet what the answer to that, because I've always been very specific about personal work. Like when I was at ILM, this is my personal work. This is professional. Like it has to be compartmentalized. Right. One, because of NDA, I can't be like working on like stuff at home and like posting it, obviously, but. Being that this is more like an outwardly facing job, I think I'm still in disbelief that I'm doing it, but I mean I'm loving it so far. You know?
How long have you been? How long have you been there doing that job?
I've been at Adobe like probably like 4 or 5 months, but I've been with a Medium team when they were at Oculus since the beginning, since 2000. Maybe 2016, 17. Like I was there before it even was anything really. Like Medium was just like kind of early on. Like you couldn't really do much. And in fact, I didn't even really like it at first. I was like, I'm going to stick with ZBrush. So I didn't really touch it for like, 6 months. And I keep telling this story whenever I do like talks or workshops. I'm like, yeah, I didn't touch it for like 6 months, but then at the back of my head, there was really something that was nagging me about it. And then when they started putting in like the move tool,
right,
it just like started like really forming it into what it is now. I'm like, holy crap. And then when I really devoted the time and got into it, like you were like excited from the get-go. I was kind of like, I'm a stubborn guy, man. Like, oh, ZBrush. I'm like comfortable in ZBrush.
Yeah.
But when that clicked for me, I was like all in. Like I couldn't really stop using it because I realized like when I did the scene of this giant chimp king with like 2 guards and then the father sacrificing the son, it was like this environment that I did. And I scale, like what you were saying, you scale yourself to the same size as these characters.
It's like, whoa.
Holy crap. Like imagine doing that in one of your pieces, right?
Oh,
like
I know. That's the thing. It's like I've had this fantasy. I mean, one of the many fantasies I have this idea for this. It's something that I, would probably never likely happen in my life because it would cost millions of dollars. But it would be like basically not to give any the context of what it would be because it's kind of like a secret thing for me. But it would require like a huge museum that would be full of creatures and just like just jam packed, creepy, but like a whole museum and almost like a maze type situation. But I mean, I saw this in a vision when I was tripping one time. Like I saw it in my I closed my eyes and I just saw this vision of this art exhibit and it was like, whoa, and I got to do this somehow. And, and it's like now with you could totally do it in VR. You could totally and it would be, it's just, that's what it's funny because when I first got into 3D with Lightwave in the 90s, I was thinking, I was interested because I was like, okay, it's going to sound like I'm degenerate, but I had this trip in 1987 and I saw it was like a vision. Like I saw like a movie when I was having this trip. And I was like, man, I wish I could make a movie of this so I could show people, but I don't have access, it's expensive to make even like a 1-minute movie is basically all it was. It was just this bizarre scene. But it was amazing because I saw it very clearly. And then I got like, this is 10 years later, I got into the computer. I was like, oh, I could do that scene in 3D, and I did it. And that was the first animation I did that Tool used. It's a really weird, creepy, it's weird. It's a really super creepy. I'll have to find a way to get you.
I want to see all your stuff. But I mean, I'm sure I've seen it back in the day too.
Yeah, I'll try and it's all scattered around. I'm out of the DVDs. I have like one DVD. They're going for like $300 on eBay now because they're out of print. But I'll have to maybe rip it from the. I have a couple DVDs. Maybe I could rip the animations just to check it out. But same thing with this other idea that I had this, visionary, mystical experience. It's like I could do it now in VR,
Totally.
And it's almost like,
tripping.
Yeah, it is. It is, man.
Because with the Quest, man, like
it really is.
I mean, previously, like these kinds of like tethered. This is like an older school headset. The Rift S is what I have right now, but it's tethered. But with a Quest, man, like you could literally rent a warehouse, right, and then have your gallery. And I would be more than happy to help you, man. If you need creatures, I would.
I'm so gonna hit you up when something like this goes.
Please consider me
absolutely
interested in that, helping you out.
You said it publicly, so I'm gonna hold you to that.
Come on, man. I'm like not gonna miss this opportunity. And you could just literally with a Quest walk around, right?
Or I mean, what I was thinking, that would be amazing. But you could even do it as a VR experience type thing, to where you're just using the joystick and you're
just sitting down, kind of like
and just checking. It could be just like a VR, one of those experience. It's like those they're like movies, or they're kind of not really a game, but Yeah, I'll tell you afterwards the idea, but and so it's like, I find myself back to where I was, in mid to late 90s but I was probably like in my 30s at that point. Now I'm in my 50s and I'm like, damn, because it's like, now I that my friend is learning the Unreal Engine, and it's how, at this point in my life, I'm like, okay, how much could you actually do yourself versus, it's more like you'd have to kind of maybe kickstart something and get a team together, because seems like so much work to do.
I think, especially with you have your own art, right? Like, I think that kind of stuff is just learning Unreal. Like, it's one thing learning Medium, right? Because that's very intuitive and it's close enough to sculpture. But like Unreal is its own kind of.
I know, but I poked my head in there though and saw a video, and it's like it doesn't look that much different than a 3D.
If you know Lightwave,
I know Lightwave, like, man. I was doing all that stuff. I was animating characters and all that, but it's time consuming. That's part of the reason. I was originally telling you the story was that I did this 3D, the Tool DVD, or I did my own DVD, the art DVD. It was called Disturb the Normal because I heard a guy, I was working at Warner Animation for a short time when I was out of work in effects. And I heard these digital guys talking technical stuff. And one of the guys says, you just disturb the normal. Because he was talking about the normal, and I was like, that'd be the perfect title for my digital dark animation DVD. And nobody gets it. Nobody gets the title. So it's like,
is that a line from a punk song? That's from some CG guys. Well, you can't get any more opposite than that, right? Like,
it was like the double meaning. I thought was perfect, but it was too obscure for anybody. Even nobody got it. Anyway,
that's an awesome title, though, man.
Thanks. But I did the animations. There's only 13 of them. The one main trip one is like a minute long. It's really cool and detailed, but some of them are like 10 seconds. Anyway, but I did the menu animation. I did everything. I did the audio. It's got like crazy, creepy audio. I'd like, just totally figured everything out. Did it all myself. And it was so much work that I just, at the end of it, I was like, okay, I never want to look at a computer again. And I really started painting then. It was like, okay, I'm going to start painting. And then I got so into oil painting that I just never went back to do any of that digital 3D stuff. But I was so totally into it, man. I was like totally into it. And I kind of regret that I didn't keep up with it, but I still use Photoshop for my paintings and mock-ups and this and that and printing and, trying ideas out. And I'll open up Lightwave from time to time for creating reference and stuff. But at this point though, now it's like, if I need reference, I'm going to model it in Medium, and I got to figure out somehow to get it into, I have something to render it. I suppose, like light. I don't know.
You could still do Lightwave.
Can I render? Because I like know Lightwave like the back of my hand because I did it for so long. So if I get imported into Lightwave, then I'm like golden, man. I could do reference for my paintings that way.
Yeah, you can pretty much like export out your mesh from Medium. Maybe you just have to kind of like lower the resolution or all that technical stuff. Right. But like Lightwave, I'm sure they have like a way for you to make that all kosher for rendering. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's yet another thing I'm excited about using that, is to like for my paintings, my artwork, to like set up lighting, because I usually do stuff just kind of out of my head. And if there's something that's weird, like a weird perspective of a hand or something, I'll take a photo. But man, I'd really love to set up some scenes virtually. Oh my god, in 3D, like life size. It'd be crazy.
That'd be crazy because you can actually in Medium there's a camera mode, right? You can kind of, instead of maybe rendering it, you can just kind of like imagine you scene as to scale. You're there and you have a camera, like a little iPad.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Kind of like you go click, it saves out a JPEG. Click, and then you just use that maybe to kind of like do your painting.
That's a great idea. So, yeah, because it doesn't, it's reference for a painting. It doesn't need to be perfect,
And you're there almost like as a photographer in your scene.
You're killing me.
Dude.
You're killing me. I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna go work in media now.
You just kind of trail off, and I'm like speaking. Oh, where did he go? He's gone.
The potentials is huge.
It's exciting. Huge. It's a good time right now. Like my energy or creative interest is higher now more than ever, and I'm like at my older phase in my profession right now. Like I'm probably one of the older generations of the CG crowd, and I'm just now being excited like I'm a 20-year-old doing all this stuff.
That's how I feel too. It's like I feel that same excitement that I had when I was doing Lightwave for the first time, and I remember the feeling I got creating my first animation was like, this is the coolest fucking thing ever. It's like I can do all this stuff myself and make these little movies. It's amazing. And I feel that way now too. Except now I'm just like, it's a matter of finding the time to do it. But it's great motivation for me to finish all the stuff I need to get done so I can really kind of get back into it.
Get the carrot that's being dangled in front of you.
Yeah. It's just like it's like the early days of it reminds me of the early days of the internet, the early days of the 3D animation programs. Is that there's stuff that people haven't even thought about doing yet in VR because it's so new. Still there's stuff that people haven't even. There's amazing ideas that people haven't thought of yet. You know what I mean?
And a lot of it, I think, is what's exciting is that people of your caliber coming into it who can add so much. Because right now, there's many different cool ideas, and then you come into it, and then you just bam, do your thing. It's like holy cow! It gets everyone excited, and then
that's what I hope I can maybe be a part of that somehow, get connected, because I'm so disconnected from it right now because I've been so focused on just like traditional oil painting. It's like I kind of want to hopefully can somehow get involved in that community and just I don't know. I'm so
it's a very open community, and hell, man, we're like just all you need to do is like, hey, Gio.
Yeah, you're the man. Like, so I'm talking to the right guy, I guess.
Let's like I don't think you're gonna have any problems, to be honest with you. Like it's
Yeah, wow. It's too fun. One thing I wanted to ask you also is how did you get out of you worked for like 10 to 12 years in the film industry, and you did all kinds of this was all at ILM mostly ILM?
Yeah, mostly 1 year at DNA Productions for Jimmy Neutron in Texas, and then
that was Lightwave, right? Wasn't that all?
That was all Lightwave.
That was all Lightwave. I remember that.
The
magazine. Yeah. I don't remember was a new Lightwave magazine or what? They had a magazine, and it's like I remember them featuring that in it.
I remember that as well. Yeah, it was all Lightwave. We did that and then I went to ILM, as I mentioned, and then ESC was also Lightwave because the model supervisor there, my friend Tarek, he was a big figure in the Lightwave community, Tarek Mirza. So he hooked me up with a gig at the Matrix when I got laid off at ILM. So, and then went back to ILM for 12 years, worked on like Pirates, all that stuff. The last project being Avengers for the Hulk. I was able to supervise that show and build the Hulk, which was great. But at that point, I was already feeling like I'm not really growing or anything. And
that's what I wanted to. That's what I want to ask you is, why did you get out of the film business, basically?
Yeah, because I got out like in the 12 years that I've been there. Like I was just trying to really prove myself and get to a point where I can have the buffet of like, I'm gonna do this. I want to work on this, and that. And when I finally got to that point, which was Avengers. They're like, do whatever you want, Gio. You made the Hulk successful, and I'm like, wow. Well, it was like at the time when the film industry, it was already on a downhill slope at that point. Like the schedules, all the stuff was going elsewhere, out of the country.
Right.
So I was like, man, I gotta like come up with a new path here because I was like trying to be like Nostradamus, like what's the film industry going to be like even 5 years from now?
Right.
And it wasn't good. Like I felt it in my bones, man, like spidey senses tingling. Like if and Avengers was evident for that, because I pretty much like, probably suffered a lot of health issues, just like working super hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a grind, man. Like the body's not designed to work that hard in front of a monitor. Right?
Yep.
So I was like, well, I got to come up with something else. And what's going on? Well, real time, like games sort of like seems to be sort of the future. And it wasn't even, VR was not even at this point.
Right.
And I was like, I want to get into games, but games, from what I hear, is also very like harsh.
Yep.
Like I'm getting old. I want to be in an environment where it's like laid back, like they treat you right.
Yeah.
I've never really had that before. Like ILM was cool, but it was still, they were still at the mercy of the studio. So it was you were still being treated like a color on the producer's board, like moved around. Right?
Yeah. You don't have to tell me.
Like,
I know all about that.
Yeah, you know all this stuff, man. Like you're like a moving name on a board that they can kind of just take off at any point. So, and then it was around that point when Valve started gaining a lot of like momentum in terms of like word of mouth. Like, oh my God. I mean, they've always been like that company to like want to work for, but they put out this pamphlet of like their work culture, and it was like seemed amazing. And I've always had connections with Valve early on in my career.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, maybe I'll just go to Valve. And then I went to Valve and managed to get a gig there. So I was there for about close to 2 years. And then this VR thing started kind of floating about. Like it was during the Kickstarter, I think, when I heard about this company, or this group of people called Oculus, Kickstarted their virtual reality headset.
Really? That was Kickstarted?
It was Kickstarted. And I think back then in the history of Kickstarter, it was the most funded, like 1 million or something.
Wow.
It was like backed by all these game companies. And I'm like, virtual reality. Like that wasn't even in my consciousness, because that's always been like sci-fi.
Right.
Like at that point, it was like, you've only really read about it or seen it in like, The Matrix, or, concepts of it, right? Of virtual reality, that construct, that world. So I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And then Facebook bought them, and I was like, oh man, dude, this is this is getting pretty interesting.
Right.
What the hell, And then from there, it's like, stars aligned, and I was able to get a gig at Oculus, thankfully. So,
that's wow.
Through my friend Kenneth Scott. So he hooked it up. Yeah,
that's so cool. Yeah, I never thought about the idea that you'd mentioned about having a huge amount of a huge company like Facebook behind something. It's like that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean,
that's validation. That's a lot of validation. I mean, say
a lot of resources
about Facebook, for all their things, but they really, because of them, I think VR is where it's at right now. Otherwise, it would have never happened. It would have been just like probably like added 10 more years into it before we really started seeing something. Facebook really just injected all that. They were all in, man. When I was there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I kind of make the joke of people, because I've been telling everybody they got to get a Quest 2, because it's like so cheap, it's so affordable, and it's so amazing. Yeah. And it's like, I'm like, you got to log into your Facebook account though, because I know that gamers aren't into that. But the way I was thinking, it's like, okay, maybe this sounds kind of bad, but it's like, we've all been bitching about the data mining and this and that, and, all the controversy. It's like, at least we're getting something amazing back finally.
Before, what do you want?
It's like, take advantage.
All that for a website. Interface that's not even nicely designed. At least now you get like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is amazing. Okay, this is kind of worth it actually.
That's how good it is. Have all your stuff in.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I would know.
But it is there's a lot to be said about just having a huge amount of resources behind something, and I can imagine it seemed like it did really well. It's done really well since it's come out, the Quest 2. So it just, to me, seems like it means they're just going to keep
Yeah,
improving it, and it's just going to keep growing because there's money. They know they can make a shitload of money there.
I mean, I've just now been reading articles on like the developers community, which is going to be the backbone of any like VR or iPhone or whatever, right? Like in the VR community, the developers, they're already making, I think one developer earned like $1 million or something because before like VR was so sparse.
Right.
If you're a developer, you invest all this money in your company, but there's not that many users yet.
Right.
But now I think with Quest, and especially Quest 2,
yep,
there's enough users there to actually bring this to the mainstream, which is pretty freaking exciting because it then gets to like what you were talking about before of like VR just becomes like a replacement to the monitor, right? Like the next way of working for all of us, maybe. Who knows?
I think so, man. I mean, just like hanging out with, doing multiplayer games is amazing too in VR. Yeah. It's so much fun and what was I gonna say? I have to. I'm gonna have to talk to you at some point because I gotta. Once my book's done, it's like that world. Everything I've painted for 20 years, it's like it's a fully developed world with all these cool characters. And every time right now I'm playing In Death Unchained. I don't know if you've played that. It's so awesome. And I'm not even like, I haven't played. It's like it's weird because I haven't played video games since like the 90s. Seriously, it's like I stopped everything to paint. Yeah, and I didn't have time. Man. It's like I've been, I've always kind of kept up on things. I got my kids all into video games, so it's like I'm aware of it. I just never had the time to do it. So all of a sudden, I got this headset with all these, amazing games, and it's like this bow and arrow game where you're shooting.
Oh, that one, yeah.
And it's like you're in these different levels of hell, and it's like you're basically at a abandoned castle fighting these monks with bows and arrows. I'm completely addicted to it, but every time I get on it, I'm just like, I keep thinking of Dystopia, the Dystopia VR game. It would be so cool. Dude. I have to somehow make this happen somehow.
Start it up, man.
Like, I don't know.
I think all you need to do, honestly, is just like cast a net and people will come, including me. Like, oh, you need help?
Yeah.
Maybe like a Piper.
Maybe the thing is when I have the guidebook, it's basically like, it's almost like a Dungeon Master's Guide type thing, from D&D, where it's just like, this is the rule book for the world. And it's like, once I have that, maybe that's something, maybe a few people we could make a little proof of concept or something,
I mean, you heard it here, guys. Yeah. I'm friggin' like I'd be up for that, man.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep you in the loop on this book.
Please do.
On this book, then. All right. I don't want to hog up. I'm so excited. I don't want to hog up your interview because you've had a pretty amazing career and your sculpting is incredible. Totally amazing stuff you're doing. It's like every time I see your work, I'm just like, I should have stayed in with this. I'm so like, I'm so envious that he's doing this stuff. It's amazing. Like it's so good. It's like, you seem like you've had a lot of training, like anatomy training and sculpting. Really traditional training. Have you had that, or are you more self-taught, do you think?
I'm more self-taught, but the one thing though that I would say is I've been fortunate to be taught by Carlos Huante.
You do a lot of stuff with Carlos.
I do a lot of stuff with Carlos, and so having his
he's amazing.
Having him really teach me about form, right, which is really what I focus on, and I've also taken a lot of like anatomy courses, but to be honest with you, like my knowledge of anatomy is now mostly just made up because I do more creatures. So when I go back to like human anatomy, I'm like, the hell is this frickin' insertion? I kind of just go, well, I'm just gonna kind of wrap that arm around here in that pose. I don't have to worry about it. It's kind of like vaguely
if it
indicated.
if it looks good, it looks good. It's like if you have like a basic base of, I don't know like the names of things. It's like, but I know like basically how things are supposed to look, basically.
Yeah.
And that's enough, especially if you're doing creature stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's more intuition based, even though when I'm doing like more human figurative stuff. And I think that's where like, going back to like when I was in school, like my like, man, I couldn't really be bothered to really like learn all the muscle inside out.
I was the same way. I was the same way.
Some people are like, they you go like skin deep, they would name you the muscles. But I think the more I found like in a time when I was more knowledgeable in anatomy and muscles, my works were a little stiffer. So there's a lot of like looseness that came into like the vagueness, and I kind of like relied more on the intuition and kind of more like the feel of, I'm not really concerned with anything too accurate or scientific, which I think a lot of people in CG, out of necessity, they do, because like it's got to be up in film and it's got to look accurate and all that stuff. So
true. But the thing that you have the most important thing, more important than any of that, which is the eye. You have the eye to know what looks good and what doesn't look good. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's key. That's it. I mean, I think over anything, it's like having an eye. If you have an eye, you can figure out how to fix it. But if you don't have the eye to see it, then you don't even know it needs fixing. That's when there's a problem. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah, you kind of just like figure out like how to finesse it to make it feel. It's about feeling, right? Like, it feels okay,
right?
Versus like I couldn't really tell what was wrong with it, or if I look at something, I kind of feel that there's something wrong without really being able to articulate it. But
it's almost like a psychic thing. It's really strange because it's a feeling. It's a feeling thing. Yeah, and it's like you can't put your finger on it, but you even when you don't know what it is, you feel that something's not right, and then you have to think about, okay, what's not right about this?
Yeah,
but. I think
it should be called the third eye.
Yeah, right. Totally. It's kind of like that. But I think I do think that I'm not saying that. I think people definitely naturally have more of an eye than others, but you can develop your eye by looking at really good artwork all the time and just taking that in. That's kind of the way to do it. Really, is just to study. Study artwork, which is my segue to who are the artists that you've been really influenced by in your personal work. I mean, obviously, like Carlos is big for me. Carlos is so. I want to have him on the podcast. He's so amazing. I mean, he's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's very articulate too. Like what I love about him is he can teach you more than just like like it's beyond design or monsters or creatures, or it's more philosophical like on that level. And I think he's the one who opened me up to that level of approach, I guess. So I mean, obviously Carlos, and then Stanislav Sokalski. Like I'm really into. Like Rodin, like where Michelangelo, obviously not so much. I admire Bernini, but there's like I'm drawn to figurative works that are just like there's something. There's like some torment. There's some twist.
I've seen that one sculpture. I think it's a digital one. It's crazy. It's like the picture I saw. It's like a side view, and it's almost like that thing is. Yeah. That thing's amazing. Is that all digital 3D, or is that like a? Yeah.
Yeah, that was rendered in.
Unbelievable.
I forgot what it was rendered in, but yeah, it was done in Medium actually.
That was done in Medium.
That was done in Medium, refined in ZBrush, kind of just like like sharpened it up and all that stuff. Right. And then I rendered it in Substance Designer, which as a painter you would probably.
That's the other thing. I just was looking at this. Just after, before we were talking, I was like, because someone was mentioning Substance Painter. Is that what it's called?
There's Substance Designer and then Substance Painter, which is all under Adobe. So it's like that whole umbrella of tools. Yeah.
And so I was looking into that because that seems like the next thing I'm going to need to get. I've got the whole creative suite thing. So I just I need to get those. But that's like kind of that you can render in Substance Painter or
Yeah, there's sort of like a preview renderer, which I think that's where I rendered that piece.
yeah, that looks
But
like totally amazing. That render looks great. So
and then there's Adobe Dimension, which is what I'm using now to render, which is sort of more of a standalone rendering.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's almost like Adobe's got their own sort of like suite of tools with Medium, there's Substance, and then there's Dimension. You can kind of just use that to take your model from Medium to Substance to render.
right.
Or you can go the Unreal side of things where it's more game centric or real time.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that'll be next. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna be hitting. You're gonna regret saying that you would help me because I'm gonna be like
seriously, man. I mean, I'm like I've admired your work for so long, but yeah, fuck. If you need help, life is too short to not help the art gods in your generation, man. Seriously, not to squid out on you.
I appreciate it.
That's a respect, man. Respect.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's weird. It's also exciting. It feels like I don't know. See, personally, it feels like something's converging or coming together finally for me personally with this somehow, and it's like I don't know. I just feel like something big is going to come of this.
It sounds like you were in. You were in makeup effects, practical effects. Then you were going into CG at a time when it wasn't really ready for you.
Yeah.
It seems like. And then you built this world.
Right. In the meantime, I waited for the community to catch up with me, and I built a world.
And now the community's offering you VR.
Right.
Freaking reality to go, now that you have this world, like, let's put it in VR.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's good timing. Right?
Yeah. Now that you mention it that way, that's what a trip.
Yeah. Just how I'm kind of like seeing how things are kind of like aligned.
Yeah.
In this chat alone, right?
Yeah, I know. And I'd never thought of that until you mentioned it. I really want to, I can't wait to, just aside from this, I want to show you, because I was doing some really pretty cool stuff on those animations I did that Tool used. I was doing some really weird, and now it's nowadays it's probably like, oh, it's no big deal, but I was using like huge. I would take a figure and use up like really weird displacement maps that I wasn't supposed to, I was doing things you weren't supposed to do to fuck everything up. And it got really cool, like really weird stuff, like using like a ripple,
fractal stuff.
Like a procedural ripple displacement map on a head in a certain way that just made it like totally trippy, weird, psychedelic, and really cool stuff. But it was all like creepy. Like everything I did was like really weird and creepy.
Man, hearing this, I think you're gonna love Substance more than Medium, man.
Really?
Like, Substance is like all about the materials, right? You can just play with it, layer it.
A lot like Photoshop.
It's quite amazing, too, man. Like you could just do your own custom material, and it's just. You can get the most complicated to just like the most elegantly simple materials.
Yeah, that's another thing. Back then, there wasn't a ZBrush, and there wasn't even a good 3D model painting program back then that I could remember. It was a bitch to do. I was doing all these textures like with texture mapping and like procedural mixing and and it was like. It was really difficult. I was just looking at that and I was like, wow, some of the samples were just like, they have like sample materials you can download. I was looking at, I was like, these are all the humans' skin textures. It's like,
pimples. Yeah, man.
Yeah. It's so exciting. So, I mean, are you doing like, are you working every day on your own work, or how often are you sculpting your own stuff nowadays?
Mostly every day. Like there's some days when I'm just like, I'm just going to watch Netflix, but pretty much I've been pretty consistent ever since like my GeoCities days, man. Like I've never really let up with the personal stuff. Like I've been, like trying to catch up on new technology, obviously VR, all that stuff. But I've been fairly consistent because I think it just at this point it became such a ritual for me that it's like breakfast, right? You just kind of just do it. Right. It's just such a part of your life that if I don't do it, I feel like, I kind of feel anxious to it. So
I know that feeling. Do you ever get your stuff 3D printed? Are you into that at all? Or because I know some people are really into 3D printing. It's like another thing that's happening.
Yeah. I was into it a little, and when I was in the Medium team back at Oculus, we printed out two things, like this big dinosaur thing that I did in Medium, and then the Gentle Giant painted it, and then we did this Carlos Huante creature that's like pretty big, and then Tim Gore actually painted it.
Oh, no way!
Us.
Tim Gore's been on the podcast.
Oh yeah,
he's an old pal of mine.
So he's one of the, in my opinion, best painters in the industry, and he did this like painting for us. But it was like a pretty trip to see like a big 3D print of that piece. But I've never really taken any interest as much as the other CG people on like 3D printing. Oddly enough, I don't know why. For me, I'm like, if I'm gonna have something substantial like that, I'd just rather do it in clay or something. Right, I think for me, it's like. Especially now with Medium, I'm like, I'm happy with that. Like I don't consider the 3D print as sort of
the final product,
the true representation of that product. Right. Clay is the true representation of that product, but 3D print is for me not like, I don't put as much value into it as I would with like a clay piece.
Right.
Like I just bought this head from Julian Murray. From the UK. He worked on Harry Potter, and he has this beautiful bust of he sculpted in clay of this head. He was selling, and I'm like, man, that's if it was 3D printed, I probably would not even buy it, know. But the fact that it was in clay, I'm like, I'm probably pissing off a lot of CG guys.
I kind of feel the same, like. From a like a production standpoint, or for like an efficiency standpoint, a design standpoint, mirroring, it makes sense to do stuff in the computer, but for me, it's like I don't have a 3D printer. Mm-hmm. I have friends with 3D printers, which I probably will experiment, maybe send them a file or something, but I can, sculpt the thing and mold it and cast it myself in like less time than it would be to do all that. It's less time and maybe less money. But, so do you have a long history in clay?
No, my history with clay has really just been when I was at ILM, I would take like sculpting classes there. And for a while, I was sculpting consistently in clay. So I think that's where I really got to see form in because I noticed like people who don't sculpt in clay but do CG, they look at it flatly, right? But I think anyone who sculpts in clay, you're seeing in the round, right? Like you're viewing this thing as a volume,
right?
So very volumetric way of looking at your piece versus, I think, with ZBrush, people who don't sculpt, it's just like they're just working on it on one view instead of like you're turning around, you're assessing, dimensionally. But I kind of regret not really keeping up with it because I felt like I was improving, especially through Carlos's guidance. Like he was really giving me some, like in clay, like he would show me his technique, right? And then I went full blast on CG out of necessity, and I just took a lot of that concept and intuition that I brought to clay, especially with Medium. The way in which I create the model in Medium is very much how I would create in clay, in layers. In fact, I'll show it to you one day. Like, you may appreciate the technique of like building up in like layers instead of like pulling everything from that one.
Right. Yeah.
One surface,
I did mess around a little bit with layers in Medium. I put some eyeballs in my zombie head. in a
Yeah, yeah.
separate layer.
And then you can merge that. You know,
Oh, really?
Say you're doing, you're blocking in your face into like the livers of clay as different layers, and then what you can do is you select all those and merge it, and then start blending it. It's
really?
like clay, dude. Yeah. When you get to that
I
workflow,
can't
I'm
wait.
sure you're gonna your mind's gonna be blown even more, man.
Yeah,
It's like
it's already so blown. I can't wait. I can't wait. So, do you ever have the urge to get into the clay now for fun?
Yeah. In fact, Cosplay sent me like a demo of their new cosplay, which I've been meaning to get to.
Is that the one that you bake and it's rubbery? It kind of flexible. Yeah, I haven't used that yet.
Yeah, the shiftlets I think were they were doing some cool stuff with it. So I got a bunch. So but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, but VR is so convenient.
I know. I know. I know, it's so much faster too.
It is, man. Yeah. So it's on me to just kind of get off my ass and stop being lazy.
Yeah. I mean, if you're satisfied as an artist, you're satisfied as an artist. You don't need to, complicate things. Yeah. One thing that tripped me out in Medium is, and it's like I almost don't like it. But it tripped me out is that it doesn't feel like it has any weight. Yeah. So it makes it feel like it's made out of like styrofoam or something. Yeah. It just like, I wish there was a way. I wouldn't even know how that would be possible, but it's like, I wish it had a little bit of weight. It makes it seem cheap. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like airy and it like, you know what I'm saying?
Like sculpting with shaving cream, as I like to compare it.
Right.
Where you can't really...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, the trick to circumventing that would be to just knock the settings of your tools down to, like, say if it's at 30 by default, like I knock it down to like 5. Because then that gives it, like, say the move tool,
right.
compared to like wet clay versus like aroma hard plastic.
Oh yeah. No, I did figure that part out. That's when I really started going like, oh shit! Yeah. Like when I took the deflate and got it really small and lowered it down so you had really fine control. That's when I started tripping out. I'm talking about like, it feels light. You know what I mean? You blow it up big and it feels light. It's almost like it feels like it should have weight somehow, even though it's impossible. But I know. That's one thing I was like
it's too 1-to-1 with your hand. It'd be cool if there was a way for like if you move your hand this way, there's like a delay.
Yeah, or like a bounce or something. Like it almost is like it has simulating. I don't know. That it's so funny.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's like. It lacks the sensitivity, and that's the thing where I think ZBrush shines is that you have the Wacom to press on the surface, and you can kind of control that the sensitivity.
There's a pushback. That's true. Right? Do you remember? I remember one of the things that back in the day of the $100,000 SGI machines, you had to run lightweight or not light Maya or back then. Remember
Softimage or whatever.
Yeah, Softimage and all that stuff. Yeah. There was one place they were doing like a force feedback sculpting arm. Remember that?
Yeah,
it was like a black thing, and it's like you could feel you'd be sculpting in digital clay, and it actually had like a force feedback thing to it. I remember that was like, that's going to be the big thing, and it just like never took off.
That contraption that the aliens, the gun, the sort of like
right.
I remember that one.
It's so funny it's so quaint now when you think about it.
I know it's like like archives of the past.
Yeah. There's so much
artifacts of the past.
So much of that stuff. So much of that stuff that just never quite took off or never was quite good enough. Even I remember when my dad was a painter, when I was a kid, and this guy, my dad used to do some airbrushing to airbrush his backgrounds, And this guy came over and demoed. I forget the name of it. It was some weird name, but it was a thing you hooked up to your airbrush. You know, because normally with an airbrush you have like either cups of paint, different paint, and you just change them out, or you have a single cup and you just clean it out, adds more paint. This had like a plastic container, and you put all your paints in here, strap it on your arm, and then had these tubes that went to this contraption that went to your airbrush, so you could just like change the colors and mix the colors, turn some off, and you could actually mix colors as they're coming through the tube. And it was like a great idea, but it didn't really work that well, so it never really kind of took off. But it was such a cool idea.
I would imagine you'd have to like clean it at some point.
Yeah.
Before all the colors turn to mud or something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's what I mean. It never quite worked. Like it clogged.
The concept's awesome. Yeah, it's like a power glove.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it just reminded me. That was like probably in the late 70s that dude brought it over and did this demo back in the day. And he was just like some artist guy that kind of like built it, you know, built it himself. It's pretty cool.
If he had Kickstarter back then.
Yeah, no kidding. That's pretty amazing that Oculus started on Kickstarter. What a trip.
Oh, yeah. It's like humble beginnings of that company.
Yeah.
Now they're like...
I know. Crazy.
Ubiquitous with like
crazy.
VR, you know?
That might be a way to do the dystopia VR games through Kickstarter, actually, because I helped raise money on Kickstarter for my documentary. We got that funded, and then my book, which is I just have to finish the book because it's 4 years late. So it's like I can't do any other Kickstarter projects until I deliver all my stuff for that, and people are being really cool about it. Thank God. But it's a great resource for that sort of thing, especially with and then like painting classes imagine painting classes in VR where you could go to or sculpting where you could go like even like 3D 3D video where you go in
like a Zoom or something,
right?
like,
and you go in the studio and look at what the person who's teaching you could look around at the sculpture. You could look over their shoulder. I mean, I think all this stuff is like Zoom, like you're saying, Zoom or whatever. It's all going to be VR. I think. I really think so.
Yeah, like it's like having someone there in VR with you while you're sculpting. Yeah, and you can do it in Medium. Like there could be two of you there in Medium and studio share.
Oh, really?
It's like you're hanging out. Like, I did that with a bunch of artists.
Ah, cool.
You're just hanging out, man. It's like you forget that you're in VR.
Right.
So because you'd like look over, there's your friend over there also sculpting, scaling the model like it's big. And
you could totally teach Medium classes in Medium.
Yeah. That's essentially my hope is that I can use that as a means to because I love to teach too. So more exciting for me is using that as a means to kind of teach classes and stuff like that. So,
how exciting! You must be really excited.
I'm over the moon, man. Can't even like really believe it's happening. But whatever. I'm gonna just not gonna bump into anything. I might wake up or something.
Right. How do you like working for Adobe?
It's amazing. It's really the dream company for me. And I've been fortunate enough to work at like a lot of really good places, like with, ILM for all its kind of issues with the film industry. That's still like the childhood dream.
Right.
And Valve was amazing. It's one of the best companies to work for in the games industry, and then Facebook, in tech. But, like Adobe, I think, it kind of everything leads up to that because it's a company focused on art and being an artist, coming into that with all these toys at your disposal, it's like the best place for me because I honestly felt like they didn't really know what to do with artists at Facebook. And granted, they're not really an art company,
right.
As great as they were to work with, but there was still, it was in a complete glove that fit in my hands.
Right.
Whereas with Adobe, I feel at least right now, it's like fits like a glove, man. Like what I do, they appreciate, and I can definitely maximize my output there. So as an artist,
I mean, their products are made for people like you. So they,
Yeah.
yeah. I love Adobe stuff. I've always loved Adobe stuff since I first started using Photoshop. I've used Photoshop a lot. Like I love Photoshop, but I really got into, especially when I was doing that DVD, I got into After Effects big time.
Yeah.
Like I love After Effects. I was doing building all my models, rendering the animations in separate passes with alpha channels, and then I bring them all into After Effects, and then I would start messing with everything and changing the composition and changing. Like I would take a single, like I have one of the animations is like this. I made a model, just a simple like shape, which is this. It was an X-ray of a dead guy, and so it looks like an X-ray of this weird body, and it's all like, it's probably like an old dead guy that's all kind of mashed together and weird. So it's like kind of this weird shape. And so I mapped it on, texture mapped this image, super simple, put some bones in it, and animated it just like writhing like this, right? So I just had a looping, single looping animation of 10 seconds of it writhing, right?
Yeah.
So I rendered that out with an alpha channel, took it into After Effects, and then I like staggered them. I put them in different layers and made them smaller and more blurry as they went away. So I didn't have to render depth of field or anything.
Yeah.
And, did the blurring in After Effects, put like a weird procedural background I generated in Lightwave with the text procedural animated procedural textures, and just stuck it in the background, and it's like it looks so amazing. It was, I really like. I remember at that time if I didn't like completely burn myself out by pushing myself so hard, I was thinking I could do this like as an artist. This is such a great creative process because it's, it's very intuitive. Like I was able to keep changing things even as I went. And normally, in 3D animation especially, you tend to think like, you're kind of stuck with, you have to kind of keep things, you have to have your idea, and then you have to execute your idea and render everything. But this way of working, I kind of figured out this workflow was like, I could keep playing with it and keep adding things and changing things. And it was really fun. And it's definitely one of the things I probably missed most about my time doing 3D is composing things in After Effects and really.
I think it's one of Adobe's best, even better than Photoshop, man. I think as a tool, that's
amazing.
Like probably the most artistic because you're dealing with motion and you're also like the ability to layer it. And I used it before too. It's just the amount of stuff you can do.
I know.
It's really amazing.
Right. Yeah. It was like I never would render a whole scene in Lightwave because it was just like, especially back then, it was just too much work for the computer to do. So it was like
in passes.
Yeah, you do it in passes, and then you also have more options, and you can kind of move things around. And now you're making me want to totally get back into digital. I already have this 15, 20-year career I've been on of oil painting, and now you're making me want to go back to digital.
It's never too late, man. I mean, look at me. I'm almost 50, and I'm just now starting with VR. And I'm gonna learn
that makes me feel okay. You're almost 50. I'm 53, so we're not that far.
I'm like 46. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm considered old.
Okay, good. That makes me feel
never
better.
Too late, man. So.
Do you have any plans? Any plans for the future as far as things you want to do, or are you just kind of like playing it by ear and seeing where this rabbit hole goes?
Yeah, I've always been mainly into like trusting my gut, right? Like kind of following where I feel things are headed the right way. But I think after accumulating this much experience already at this point, like it's time to kind of like put use to a lot of what I've gotten into maybe something more of a plan. So if that's more of like, creating my own animation or just being more independent eventually, like, maybe some years from now to kind of gain enough of a name or whatever to be able to support myself independently and just do, like what you're doing in terms of like expressing yourself with your own ideas and in a way that you do. I think that's sort of the high bar for a lot of artists, right? To be able to live that way. But I've always been sort of more in the professional setting, so like to make that jump is very daunting because I've always had to rely on like a company to so it's been my crutch, but a good crutch, right?
Oh yeah,
as an artist,
as long as it's continuing to move you forward and you're growing as an artist, then you're you're golden.
I'm golden. I feel very fortunate, but I still don't feel like I'm maximizing what's inside my, like, eventually I want to just purge all of that because I got so much stuff I want to do. You know, like,
yeah, you definitely have a vision. You know, I could see in your work, it's like you've got an artistic vision that needs to be like expressed,
unplugged or whatever.
Your stuff is just like, you know, I really amazing. I mean,
thank you,
as good
That's
as
an honor.
As good as it gets. It's exciting to see. That's another thing. Back in the day, I would see, you know, like I said, I remember taking my tape to that one dude, the dude who did, what was it called, that clown movie?
Bingo.
So I remember taking it to him, and I had like all my weird shit on this. It was still that stuff that Tool ended up using, but it was my demo reel at the time, and it was cool. It was weird and totally this fucked up, and it was like nobody's using 3D to do this weird stuff like this, and I thought he would like give me a job or something, but I never heard back from him. And I remember back then there wasn't a lot of artists. It was like more like tech people like that were into it in a way that, you know, for the same reason, because it's like it's fun and it's interesting and it's you're building things and making things, but it was more like engineering type people that were doing it. And so to see someone like you totally immersed in the technology is really cool. Like, it's like finally people can see, you know, what this stuff is capable of, you know, because you couldn't back then, because there wasn't a lot of people with like a artistic vision back then doing it.
Oh wow!
You know,
man, that's amazing to hear. Thank you, man.
Nice. I'm so, you know, so impressed with your work. I'm so inspired by your work. Really,
thank you.
Like I said,
it's man, you keep giving me an ego here.
No, it's just, you know, like it's.
Thank you. I'm very, very honored to hear that. I swear, like. Yeah, and you know, it's awesome hearing it from someone who appreciates a lot of the things I've appreciated growing up, right? And whose works I've admired. So it's trippy, man. Like, you know, you do, like, doing art, you kind of forget that you do things that are like, I do it because it's like, it's cool for me, but then, you know, you realize other people are like gravitating to it. It trips me out. Like, like, really? Like,
I was just doing this because it was fun.
It was fun, man. Like,
yeah, that's like this is the amazing thing about art. You know, it's like you know, I think most artists I know, if not all artists I know, are really doing it because it's fun and they love it and they have to express it. It's like a thing in us, and it's what we love to do. And if people like it, that's great. You know, it's like, you know, it's not like we're doing it. Oh, I want all these people to be happy, so I'm busting my ass making this work, which I do. I definitely want to inspire and stuff, but really the main reason is because it's so fucking fun. It's like fun. It's like the funnest thing I could think to do. Really, it's like that's why.
Like the only thing I feel that tickles something that's like, you know, that feeling when you're in that kind of mode of like. It's hard to explain, man. It's like this vibration you're kind of like feeling, right? Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like a drug. It's like it's like you feel energized all of a sudden, and you feel like in a good mood. It's weird. It's definitely, when you are in the flow and things are working well, it's just like a buzz. It's like a major buzz. It's like a healthy drug. You know what I mean?
And then you sleep, you wake up, you look at it, you go, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah. Or even worse is when you are not in the flow, and you're trying to get something done, and it's just not clicking, and it puts you in a terrible mood, and you can't sleep, and you feel like it's like you're not getting a drug.
I need my fix, man. I need my fix. Hit him up.
Well, man, I really thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, man. Likewise. Thank you.
I'm going away from this extremely excited and psyched about the future, and I hope people who listen. We've got a lot of regulars, artists, regulars that listen to this podcast. Get an Oculus Quest 2 because it's if you can, it's affordable. Finally, VR is affordable.
Didn't they like lower the price? Like they took off like $100 or something. Maybe during the holiday season.
Maybe. I mean, it's like it's $300 for the smaller storage one and $400 for the bigger storage one, I think.
Yeah.
But I encourage everyone listening to get one and get Adobe Medium and start. This stuff is.
It's trippy. It's a trip.
It's a trip. It's beyond a trip. So yeah. Anyway, because I'm so excited. I feel like an idiot. I feel like an idiot because I'm so excited about it. Anyway, so where can people find your work if they haven't seen your work, which I'm sure they have, but for those of you.
My social media, I usually post on Instagram, so it's if you go Instagram at Gio Nakpil, so my last name is Nakpil. That's a hard one to pronounce for people for some reason. They call me nipple napkin. It's
I had to write it down Nakpill. It's like I had to phonetically write it out. Oh, that makes perfect sense because I heard you say it in another interview because I wanted to pronounce it right.
Props to you on that. That's hard. That's really hard.
So and then we'll put your any links you want will be in the description of the podcast, and I look forward to staying in touch with you for sure.
Please do, and whatever help you need with your project if you ever decide to start that up.
I'm so going to be hitting you up. You don't even know. We're going to be like best pals. You'll see.
Yes. My goal is to be in VR with the stuff that you do. So
excellent. Cool. Well, thanks. I really enjoyed talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time. And at the end of the podcast, we always say goodbye to the audience. So let's say goodbye. Goodbye, audience.
Goodbye, audience. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody.